Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July meeting of the Permanent Building Committee. We're here to talk about two subjects tonight. The first will be the ongoing DPW construction project. I think we have all of the members here except for Rich Nichols, who couldn't be here with us tonight. I have to say, on a personal basis, I am thrilled to see you all in person. It's been a year and a half, and I think it's terrific that we are able to be together again and continue business. It was a challenge, as I'm sure all of you know, conducting business over Zoom. But we did the best we could, but I think, at least I personally find this a little more effective, if less convenient, but glad to be back. And so, hello to everybody. I'd like to start with, I don't think we need introductions. I think everybody knows everybody. But I'm going to turn the meeting over to Robert Taylor, our architect, sitting to my left, for an update on the project. I just saw that we got a 2-week look ahead from Nick Jensen. I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at that, but if you could.
I saw it on my phone and I decided I should not look at that.
All right. Okay. Can we just scoot that in front of him?
Great.
Robert, give us an update on where we're at.
Yep.
The issues that we need to talk about tonight, and we'll talk a little bit about the future.
Good. Well, thank you. I would add to your warm comments about good to see everybody. I'm glad everybody got through the pandemic in good health. We're all very fortunate for that. So at the DPW, the project is, I'd say, in a good spot schedule-wise. We've lost a little bit of time, but nothing that can't be made up in the period between now and when it's scheduled to be complete. So overall schedule is good. There is a 2-week detailed look ahead that I'm not exactly familiar with what is on Nick's schedule, but I do know that the Kingspan panels, eagerly awaited metal panels, are expected next week. And that will be a quick change in appearance when those go up. I think they'll go up rather quick, a couple of weeks I expect. And because the building has sort of looked like the same thing for a couple of months now, so it'll be a jolt of progress visually anyway. In spite of the panels coming next week, Cardozi, our contractor, has proceeded and wrapped the staff building in Tyvek so that he can get a sign-off on the electrical work and plumbing work that's really can't be done with the building open to weather. So the Tyvek gives them the enclosure that they need in order to get inspections.
Did he do that for his own convenience?
I think in the interests of the overall project, and including their own. Yeah.
We're not going to see a charge for that. Right?
No, there's no charge for that. A lot of the underground site work is complete. There is a big oil water separator tank that's recently been excavated and installed in front of the vehicle building. This takes all of the flow off the floor of those buildings and separates the bad stuff from the good stuff and lets the good stuff keep going on into the sewer system. That's probably the biggest structure on the site overall. I noticed today it had been placed. The roofs are on, both the one we like, the rubber one, and the one we are unhappy with, the metal, standing seam metal roof. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. The metal roofing company, I call them Greenspan I conflate the two companies together. Greenwood Industries will be on site tomorrow. And I asked if they could meet at 9:30 to talk in detail about what they plan to do to rectify the situation. And that's because I have a hard stop at 11. I've got to get back into town. So if anybody on the Permanent Building Committee wants to get into that discussion with Greenwood, I encourage you to come a little bit early tomorrow. Otherwise, we'll inform you how it went during the regular scheduled meeting.
Plan on being there at 9:30.
Okay, great. The daylight panels, translucent plastic daylight panels called CalWall, have been installed on the vehicle building. So once that building gets wrapped in metal panels, that'll be free daylight that comes in. And those are insulated, in case anybody wonders about that. They're just as well insulated as the metal panels are. So the daylight's pretty heavily filtered. I don't know if there's anything I'm missing here, things that I noticed when I stopped by there on my way here. Those are the high points. I could not get inside the staff building, it was locked up, but I understand there's finished electrical and plumbing underway there.
But the arrival of the panels will allow that interior work to, at least in the staff building, to commence in earnest. So we should see not only a change from the outside, but there should be an awful lot of other interior work, finished electrical and plumbing, drywall,
Yep.
finishes, casework.
It's
all
also
sorts
true-
of things that will now be able to proceed.
Yes, that's also true of the vehicle building. The vehicle
Right.
building, they'll be able to proceed with interior finishes there as well.
But what I did see, I think the vehicle building is less of that work
Yeah,
in that building.
it's true.
And it looks like from just by glancing at the 2-week look ahead, that they're going to start with the staff building so they can get a jump on
Mhm.
all of those trades. And then when the panels are up there, then they'll move to it'll be, I guess, one crew, and then they'll move from the staff building to the vehicle building.
Mhm.
That's how I understand. It's looking
Okay,
at these-
good. So that's kind of a high-level view of where things stand. We have I've already mentioned the discussion underway about the standing seam metal roof. I'm not sure if everybody here is up to speed on that, but that work was done rather expeditiously when Cardozi did not have representation on site, and it was very poorly done in my view. And I stopped over at the Clyde Brown Elementary School. As I pulled into the lot, I saw, oh wow, there's a standing seam metal roof, and a few minutes to spare, and that's a very nice standing seam metal roof. It's almost the exact same material, but the level of finish, the level of execution on the elementary school is much better. So you have to almost like take a picture of one, take a picture of the other, and compare the two. There's just a lot of crimp marks. They crimped it by hand rather than mechanically seamed it, and so the finished product is not up to, I think, normal industry standards, and not my standards for sure.
So let's make sure we understand about, is the roof as it exists today accepted or acceptable or not?
Not acceptable.
All right.
They claim that Firestone says it's acceptable, which means it's up to Firestone's warranty standards. That's one form of acceptance, but it also needs to be, well crafted, which it is not. So we're going to hear from them tomorrow what their proposal is to improve this situation. I don't know what they're going to say, but
Well, we will be looking to you for a recommendation as to when and if the roof is acceptable.
yep,
All right.
yep,
Hopefully we'll know more about that tomorrow.
yeah.
Robert, we did ask Nick to talk with them, correct?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
To be firm with them that this was not acceptable for us.
Yes, I sent Nick a carefully worded email with photographs saying what's not right and exactly where in the specifications and submittals they failed to meet what the design obviously called for, and even what the metal roofing manufacturer's recommended method of installment clearly says mechanically seaming the seams is required, and they didn't do that. So The other item,
Hold on, let's just-
okay.
Any questions about the schedule overall, where we stand? Or this issue about standing seam?
Yeah, Robert, I think Rich Nichols was under the impression that there was pushback coming from Cardozo on that roof. Do you feel that way?
I don't feel that way. I think that they are privately talking to their subcontractor. And I'm not.
You said a minute ago that they had no representation on site at that time,
There was one day when John Bolster was not there.
and that's the day they did the roof?
That's the day they did the roof.
Quick, well, he wasn't there.
Right. I don't understand why there'd be any hesitancy on Cardozo's part that they own this.
I think John. If I talked to John, John finds the roof completely unacceptable.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's more of a Greenwood issue. I think Cardozi has been standing a little more on the sidelines. Certainly they could be more upfront about where they stand. We'll find that out tomorrow.
Yeah. I have run into this type of problem with filed sub bids on other jobs. They can get a little full of themselves, thinking that they really don't have to listen to their general contractor, that they got this job on their own merits, and they don't really owe the GC too much. And sometimes it's roofing, sometimes it's electricians. It's a bit of attitude that
Do you know if this sub does a lot of work with Cardozo?
they do not. They had not worked with Cardozi before, as far as I know.
They're really trying to build a relationship, don't you think?
I can see that.
But it's a filed sub bid, John, so
Yeah.
the general's got to take.
I know, I get it.
Whoever it is. I'm trying to recall whether or not Greenwood was the contractor on the police fire project. Something.
I don't
Keep in my memory.
recognize the
that
name, but
They might have been involved in
Have we paid them?
that.
No.
We have not. We're withholding.
So we haven't paid them.
Correct.
there is leverage.
So
There's about $50,000 unpaid to Greenwood. It was on the requisition that this committee reviewed last week as a draft version, and prior to the Permanent Building Committee meeting, we said, you got to take that off the requisition, we're not paying that, and Cardozi did.
So they know that part.
Yeah, that caught their attention, I think.
And how long do we have in terms of the back and forth in here before it starts to potentially affect the ending?
I don't think it has any effect on the schedule, Jim.
No.
It's not functionally harmful to the interior of the building. I think it's more of a long-term
Okay.
issue. A metal roof is, a very durable roof. It's just not been sealed according to the specs, and the way they did it damaged the finish. Both of those issues need to be addressed, but the roof is functional.
Yeah. And if one of the courses of correction, one of the possible courses of correction would be to take the roof off, because they damaged it, and reinstall a new metal roof. And if that were if we all determine that that's what's got to be done, the metal roof could be taken off at any time going forward and reinstalled, fresh material. Underneath it is a Grace high temp underlayment, like a peel and stick weatherproof barrier that can be exposed to weather for, I think, up to 60 days. So it wouldn't need 60 days, but they could take the metal roof off. It could stand there with the Grace underlayment exposed for a week or something while they put the new roof on. And that could be done a year from now. It doesn't need to be done before the building is taken over.
But we're not advocating that. That would be
No,
like
no.
that's the worst case.
Worst case.
Yeah, yeah.
fix it now.
Right. Right. So let's talk about our other hot issue, which is the sewer connection.
Yep.
Any other questions about schedule or?
Well, I think the only other schedule that has come forth in the last couple of days, they're starting to grade the problem. Or they're looking to start to grade it. Which is good. I mean,
Does that create any kind of operational issue for you?
no, we won't. We'll make it, that won't.
Okay. I saw that they had removed a lot of the blacktop over by where the buses are parked. Yeah. But you're still functional? Great.
If the roofers have to bring in a low, that's on big fat tires, isn't it? And it
Yeah,
shouldn't disturb your grade.
Yeah, that's on the other side.
That's a rough grade too.
Okay.
So the second issue that Wayne noted is proposed change order number 9, which is for the sewer connection. This is how the sewer lines for the new buildings tie into the existing sewer mains that leave the site. And the change order came up approximately 6 weeks ago, maybe longer ago, when the site contractor, Alan Ouellette, had basically trenched all the way to manhole number 3, where they were planning to tie into. And when everyone looked at that, people began to say, that's a very difficult connection to actually execute. And Dave offered some ideas about other ways to tie in with an elbow. Then there was a discussion about tying in instead to the vault, and we had a very good conversation about that, I would say 3 weeks ago or so, where I think there was general consensus that that was not a good idea because the difficulty of the depth of the vault, the amount of waterproofing that would be needed to cut a hole in the side of it and then put a pipe into it and seal that up really well. So there was a lot of downside to that solution. Ultimately, what was determined was that a different kind of connection had to be made, and this would be a connection that would be upstream from the vault, between the vault and manhole number 4, to create a new manhole and connect into that one. And that is the design that was received today by the town of Millis. DPW, Jim got the stamped engineer's revised design, and I understand you forwarded it to GCG for their review. The contractor, Cardosi, sent a price for this work in the form of proposed change order 9, revision 2, for a total of something around $25,000. And this caught everyone's attention. We asked them to consider a time and materials approach rather than lump sum. And one of the main problems with their $25,000 price tag for this revised design is that the main pieces of it are 2 kind of black boxes. One is $11,000, the other one is $3,000. It's just, to furnish and install a manhole and furnish and install trenching to the new manhole. So that's more than half of the change order, and there's no detail at all. So we really can't verify whether the pricing is fair or correct. So we have asked the subcontractor that's Alan Olet, to consider doing this on a time and materials basis. And the word I got back from our general contractor, Cardozi, is that the subcontractor, the site contractor, Olet, would rather not do that because of the difficulty of accounting for the use of labor and materials and machines that are already on site doing things that are under contract, and diverting them over to this particular task. And just how exactly you track all of that, and time slips and all that stuff. And that's not the last word. That was just the last exchange we had with Olet. Cardozi has asked that we give them some form of correspondence saying, buy the manhole and dig the hole to, they need to do an excavation at the location of the manhole just to confirm that what they order will fit in that hole, that there's no obstructions. So they would need some clear direction from us to dig the hole and order the manhole. And I'm hoping that this committee will agree to that as a starting point, because the manhole itself is a 4 to 5 week lead item. It's a concrete structure made by Situate Precast. And so if they can order it, say, tomorrow, it'll arrive in late August sometime. So in the interest of moving the project towards its completion, we should take that step, I think.
Before we deal with that issue, I'd like to back up and talk about proposed change order that we have in hand as is. And I want to get an understanding, particularly from Dave Ramachi, who's our project manager, as to whether or not it is worthwhile going down this path of tracking this work on a time and materials basis versus doing it on a lump sum basis. And the reason why I asked the question is that of the $20,300 roughly that Olet has submitted here, $14,000 of it is furnish and install new sewer pipe and manhole structures. It's a major part of it, and it's essentially lump sum. So my question to you, Dave, is we certainly have an opportunity to save some of that. I think the other pieces here are probably better known, more finite. But I guess the question is it worth it to go after that $14,000 and monitor it?
I have no problem keeping track of every second that what they do with that project. For them to say that they have to pull one thing from the other is literally 100 feet from where they need to start to.
But whether or not you can track it, I guess my question is, do you have an opinion as to whether or not we'll actually realize some cost savings by doing that?
It's hard to say because I've done the work. You can always make up that money by just not digging as fast as you would with the upfront price, you know what I mean? You can certainly cheat the system.
All right, well, let me ask you a question. We had Robert and Rich Nichols and I had a call about this yesterday to talk about this very issue. And one of the alternatives that was considered was to just remove this from Cardozi and self-perform the work.
And I talked to Jim and I actually talked to Rich about that on Saturday. Is I don't feel comfortable at all taking over the end piece of a project that's doomed to fail from the beginning. You know what I mean? It's a 0.5% pitch. Anything that happens, any warranty that they want on their side, they're going to say my side fit.
Right.
Guaranteed.
Understood. That's reasonable. I just had to ask the question because that was an alternative that was being considered. And if it's not, then it's not.
I wouldn't feel comfortable.
We
finishing.
did talk about that last week, wasn't it?
I know it's been mentioned a couple of
Yeah.
times, but
Yeah.
I would definitely not feel comfortable finishing the last piece of any construction.
Okay, all right.
So, personally, I'm, if I look at the construction process, and I think all of you that have construction experience here, for this type of work, if they're going to put a firm price on the work, they're going to protect, they're going to look at it the most conservative way. So I think there is some opportunity for saving some money here. Whether or not we can or not remains to be seen. But the question is, should we try? Okay. John, what's your feeling?
Well, I mean, it's always worth a try. I kind of agree with Dave that instead of 25,000, it might come in at 24,500 or something. But it's worth a try, yeah.
All right. Robert, what's your recommendation? You're a paid sheriff in town here. What's your advice to the committee?
Well, I would first concur with Dave's opinion that it would not be good to finish the last piece of this. That would leave daylight between you and OLET over the functioning of that system. I think OLET has to execute the whole thing for your own interests. I recommend that we continue with OLET to complete the work, that Millis should not be taking this on because that would leave daylight between them, OLET, and the fully functioning operation of the sewer system. They'd be able to point fingers at whoever did the finishing touches. So, and I do think that because we have trained eyeballs on site in the form of Dave, who can keep an eye on what OLET is doing, and who's working on that stretch of the work, you're fully staffed up and with the right people to do it by on a T&M basis. I'm not inferring that AO is in any way not fair and square. I don't know them very well. You probably know them much better than I do at this point. So I think you're in a good position to do it that way.
Okay.
And you might save money.
Well, I'd like to at least put us in a position to do that as opposed to precluding that opportunity. All right. Shoot.
It would be a not to exceed 25,000, time and material not to exceed 25,000.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine. Then I agree with you 100%.
Diane?
Yep, I'm
That's
fine.
my question. There's no downside,
Yeah.
only, there's no upside for them.
There should not be any pushback from them agreeing to the upset price. If they're willing to do it at this price, then the only question is accounting on an ongoing basis that they should never go over. One of the issues when you do time and materials is because you can't define the scope, and then the price could exceed because of some unforeseen contingency. We need to preclude that, and that's why the upset price is critical.
Could I ask then one other question, which is, I know in reading the material, aim fire, there's been a lot of back and forth as to what is the right solution to get this job done.
Well, that's
Are we confident that this is now the correct way to do it?
well. That is an excellent question, and I turn that over to Jim McKay now because having the stamped drawing for which all of this work will then execute towards that completion of that stamped drawing, GCG has now seen it. Have they given you any kind of a answer yet, Jim?
No, they just received it today. I think, let's go back to the, first, all GCG is looking at is the same plan, the first set of plans that we looked at from a professional engineer that said the system was going to work. And now we're finding out it's
Tell
not.
me who
it's not-
GCG is.
GC, no, he knows.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes. And now we're finding out it didn't work. We're looking at another set, and that's why I was, really adamant about not looking at, not approving anything until SGH, stamped that plan. Because now we have something in front of us saying again to us, here you go, Millis, this is gonna work this time. And now, GCG reviewed the first set of plans from a professional engineer that if you look at it in paper, that any one of us could have looked at and said, yes, it's gonna work, but it didn't. Now, is this gonna work? We don't know until, because of the slow and minute pitch that we're looking at, this has a better way to work than the other way. We know that. And on the price, I mean, honestly, I haven't been asked, I don't think it's a bad price. I think it's when they gave that price, I thought it was a pretty fair price for what was involved and for the work. I mean, you're talking about, almost a 10-foot trench?
Deep, yes.
At least 10 foot, if not 15. So every time you go, when you get to a lower depth, you're talking about more protection for the workers that have to get in that hole. That trench box is not cheap, that they have to get. It's not theirs, they gotta lease it. So there's a way, we can find out that price. If they hit water, which they're going to, because we did when we were putting that, when we built the wet well that we would, we weren't allowed to drill into, they're gonna hit water. And they're gonna have to come up with how, in that price, they're not gonna ask for anything else, if you get a fair price of $25,000, well, it's up to you to pump it out and get that manhole in there. I think on a time and materials, when you go that way, they're gonna say, well, we needed 3 days to pump that hole dry. Because of, and groundwater right now is up everywhere in Millis. The entire area is saturated. So I think we need to, keep that, and that's why we're going this way. That's why, Mr. Carter did not want to use a doghouse manhole, which he was absolutely 100% correct in his, when he looked at it right away. Is that going to cost more? I don't know now. I mean, they haven't come back and said, I know that, Emmanuel put took the doghouse manhole out and put a preformed full manhole. Do we know they're gonna charge more for that? Because they don't know that. Yeah, I mean, that's not the price they gave. They gave a price of a doghouse manhole. So, what's the way to go? Like I said, I saw the $25,000, and if it's like, if you're gonna get that manhole, and now we're finally gonna be able to flush a toilet in that vehicle building, and it's gonna make it down into that manhole, it's your responsibility to do it.
Well, I understand your point about unforeseen conditions and dewatering.
Yep.
But frankly, we've already dealt with unforeseen conditions with the issue of the flow, the 500,000 gallons of flow that they said they weren't aware of at the beginning. So we're exposed to claims regardless of what's in their price or what's not in their price. And I think it goes back to the earlier comments about what is, if we do time and materials or a fixed price, that the understanding is that it's all in, that the upset price is not to be exceeded in any circumstance, or that the fixed price likewise is not to be exceeded, regardless of dewatering or any other issue. When do you expect to have some kind of a response from?
Probably tomorrow.
Okay.
I mean, as we know, GCG actually designed the second phase of it.
Right.
And SGH was, they were the ones that took the drawings back and built it onto their plan to make it work. I think that once the manhole issue was addressed from, removing the doghouse manhole, I see no issue. Because myself, Mr. Carter, and Tony Ma, the engineer, that actually, we were in Dave, we were all in contact. Dave did SGH never came out and took a grade from day one on this project. We, again, we did the grade shots, you know, for this phase of and they just used those numbers. So again, if SGH wants to use and trust somebody else's, then I'm confused with that. That puzzled me that, you know, they never came out once and shot one grade from those manholes. And that
Well,
was,
Understood, and I think that's a fair comment. But I think the ultimate result of that is that Taylor and Burns, SGH, whoever owns the design, right?
and that's why we got the stamp drawing. I believe that, with talking to Tony Ma, the engineer, he will review it. He's talking to Mike about it tomorrow. I think you'll get your answer tomorrow.
Okay,
And
great.
that's why I would ask if the board approves it, which I would hope that the board, you know, would vote to approve it, contingent on whatever the town signing off on it, because eventually we will. That's where the approval will be, is with the town, stating, your application to the town and approving it. And that is with GCG.
Okay, all right.
So to a point that you made about the survey and the inverts, the design of that system was based on a survey that had been done. SGH had hired a surveying company that utilized on-site information as well as information contained in previous surveys for all of the inverts. And so SGH themselves may not have been out here surveying, but the design was based on an understanding of where all the inverts were based on that survey, and then a very low slope, half-inch pitch, because given where the inverts were on those manholes and given where the floor levels were on the buildings and the distance to traverse between point A and point B, it was a half-inch pitch or 0.5% pitch, really very minimal. Agreed. And if they raised the floor slabs of any of the buildings in order to get a better pitch, it would have required a lot of retaining walls and a lot of very difficult grading between buildings. There's a lot of different points of view on this, but as I understand it, the problem with the first design was that the low pitch in combination with the very high flow was a recipe for backflow problems. And it was that very high flow that was not in anybody's survey, and it wasn't really a known piece of information in the design. It wasn't really known until a manhole got opened up and people began to talk about making that connection. That's my understanding of it.
And I appreciate that's your understanding. In early discussions with this tie-in with SGH, they were told about the wet well. They were told they could not use the wet well as any early on, before any design was done. As you remember, there was two different designs. It was going to come between the water treatment plant and the garage itself, where the grass area was going to be, to connect to this manhole we're going to do. And they chose not to do that because I think that's where maybe the elevation was going to have to be raised a little. So that's how we came with this flow here. There was always a known factor of what comes from that grinder station that comes down that flows into the wet well. It was always there. It had to be. I mean, it takes 3/4 of the sewerage in the town of Millis. So to state that no one knew that there was a large flow coming into that manhole, that's just not.
I don't mean to say nobody knew.
Yeah, that's not accurate.
SGH did not know.
I beg to differ, but that's that's.
I would say it's fair, certainly, to comment and say, 2 weeks ago when we were rolling around trying to figure out what to do, and GCG got involved, they knew they had a problem. SGH did. And Sean, who I don't know, was on vacation leaving Emmanuel trying to figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think SGH fell down a little.
Okay, I agree.
But we have a good design now. I believe we have a good design now, and I think this is what we need to do to move forward, to finalize this set. You know, I agree with that. I think Dave agrees with that, and I'm sure Mike Carter, that's why you saw my email. I want him to put it on his letterhead, you know, stating that he agrees with it. Because eventually, it's the town paying him to make that comment.
Well, frankly, I'm glad to hear you say that, because this is not the time to be designing anything within a project. You know, this should all have been done previously, but the fact that we're doing it now, what we're asking for is something that will work and that it can be done at a fair price. We're not asking for any of the costs that have already been sunk on the previous effort to connect to manhole number 3. We're just asking that this be done at a fair price. So if you think that this will work and we get the approval from or GCG's recommendation, then I think we should proceed, and it's a question of not the work or the scope, but then the cost. And if hopefully we can, in fact, get some savings. So towards that end, I have 2 questions. There's another companion PCO dealing with the connections to the manholes, the fiberglass connections. What's the recommendation as to whether or not we should accept that? Should we do that? Should we consider that in conjunction with this change order? Does it stand alone? What's your thought about that, Robert?
It's a separate matter. It's a question of what would be a better finished product at the bottom of the manholes for considering the low slope and the fact that brick-lined connections might provide more friction, more resistance to the water that is flowing very slowly, and so there's an advantage for a better functioning system using the fiberglass liners, as I understand it.
I agree with that also. I didn't agree with Nick's $5,000 with shooting all the inverts and outverts and everything else. I just thought that was ridiculous. For one, AO has a shot of everyone going in and out already that he puts on his phone every time he digs it, and it should all be part of the as-built at the end. All those should be done anyway. So for them to charge us now and later, I don't agree with that.
Okay.
We have 2 issues now. One is we need to get something documented and move forward, and then we'll go back and figure out who owes what to whom, correct?
Right, and so I'm unclear. Diane, you're absolutely right. I'm unclear as to what it is. If I look at this PCO here for $20,303, and if the manhole structure is a doghouse instead of what actually is being considered, and the cost to dig a pit to verify that it will fit, what is it that we're being asked to approve? A specific item for a specific amount of money?
Cardosi has asked that if we won't agree with the PCO, and they are not yet comfortable with doing a T&M, because he needs to get that clear with AO. In order not to lose any more time, they would like a piece of correspondence that directs them to dig the hole where the manhole is supposed to go as a test excavation and purchase the manhole structure so that Situate Precast can get business.
And that was $750, right, for that process?
I think it was, I thought the structure was estimated at.
No, just to dig the hole and take the shots.
Oh, yeah. I think that's right. I don't have it in front of me.
It's gonna be a nightmare, honestly.
What were you looking at?
Excavate and backfill it. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
700?
700.
Do you think it's gonna be a nightmare because of the groundwater?
Groundwater, for them to actually see the pipe and take a shot off both ends. Groundwater, because they're gonna be pumping and I don't even know how they're gonna do it without having a trench box just to do that test hole at 10 feet deep with the water coming in, ripping out the bottom. But that's the price they gave, so.
Yep.
Well, I mean, do you think then that maybe we should stop this talk about T&M and just take the price?
Yeah.
I can tell you that SGH has an estimator on their staff, and they thought it was a fair price. And they based it on the fact that the kind of crew that's needed to do this and the equipment that's needed to do this type of work, it runs about $3,000 a day, and it would be about a week's work, and so they thought $15,000 just in the excavation, and you know what on the PCO adds up to $14,000. The SGH's guys thought 15 would be his number, so.
And I think when the town has overruns, and when we look at unforeseen costs, that you usually put exactly, the cost estimated puts $300 a day. And usually when somebody comes to a bid, and if they're excavating, putting a water main in, and you have it's the same thing. So if you go above and beyond, you cost that out, $300 a day. And whatever that cost is, you're gonna get that job done at the bottom line. You're not gonna come back and say, I need $10,000 because I had to do this, that, and everything else. That's why, and I get the idea of putting a 25 on either way, but I think you're gonna come up with the 25 no matter what. Either way, you're gonna come up with that. Like Dave said, it's gonna be, I don't think they'd stretch it out, but I think that's why I thought 25 wasn't that bad of a price.
Well, let's test the water here. What is your recommendation, Jim?
I would say take the bid that they gave.
Dave?
I think it's gonna be really close either way.
Robert?
I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough about the cost of this type of work. I'm not that close to it to make a strong recommendation. I can only tell you that our civil engineer thought it was a fair price.
Okay. John?
I agree with that. I think it is a fair price. Again, like I said earlier, it's always worth a try, but I don't know that it's gonna go anywhere.
Okay.
I was
Save
going
the
to be.
best for last.
Yeah, I was going to. I was a gambling person on it. I thought maybe there could be some savings, but listening to the experts and hearing how close it's going to be, I don't know if the friction that we might get for the requirement to keep the time is going to outweigh any potential savings, and whether that savings is $300 or $400. Is it worth the friction? And that's my only thought. I don't know enough about it to have an opinion on either way. Conceptually, I like the time and materials with the $25,000 cap, but if we're arguing between $25,000 and $24,950, I don't care.
No, and just to give you my own perspective on it, I think that what we would realize would be in the range of $3,000 to $5,000, probably something of that magnitude, if everything went right. But if there's,
How often does that happen?
well, if it was dry, if we didn't have water problems, I look at that and think dewatering and the trench box are a real factor.
So Wayne, you would agree then, like Robert said, first move forward with the $750, then we're gonna know that. We're gonna know if they're gonna hit groundwater.
Right.
If they dig that.
Right.
That is, so we
Right.
should
Right.
move forward with that.
Right. Well, let's
No,
let's continue our poll. Diane?
Last but not least.
No, you're not last.
do not.
Oh, no.
Santa Claus is coming.
We'll be done by Christmas.
So if we accept
Only 7:30.
the change order price, is that fixed? Can they go over that?
They can ask, they can do anything they want. They can always come back and say, our price was based on reasonable standards, things that could have been known, and what we ran into could be, who knows? It could be huge boulders, could be contaminated soil, could be groundwater, could be Indian artifacts. It could be 100 different things that would fit into that category that they would make a,
But if that happens, either category,
it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So I guess probably the insurance is a better idea, going with the change order price.
Okay, all right.
Like, Didn't the original thing,
Are you not going to let Jim talk? Is it?
oh, I have a question before. Didn't the original thing say, T&M not to exceed 25,000?
No, that's what we're proposing.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yes.
But they're not gonna accept that, are they?
They have not accepted it. In fact,
I
they
don't think
said,
they'd accept it in a million years.
well, so, and Robert and I have been talking about whether or not we could direct them to do the work on that basis, and we would monitor it that way, and then we,
But there's no upside to that for them.
no, they don't want to do it.
Right.
So, I agree with Diane. I think at this point, I'd like to get some value out of this. In other words, some intangible value. Look, we debated this, and there's a strong feeling that a T&M might have worked better for us, but we're willing to go along with what you propose. But keep in mind, we got a chit here, that we have to play it, we will.
So my recommendation would be, let's do this in 2 steps. I think we have an understanding of what the risks are and what's the better alternative for us. I can tell you that Rich Nichols is very much in the camp of doing this time and materials. And until we had this discussion, I was certainly much more leaning in that direction. I'm not sure I was quite in the same position that he was, but certainly, in fact, that was my recommendation. So this is a change on my part. But I think there is merit in authorizing them to purchase the structure and dig the pit. And then we'll know much more about, we still have the ability to approve the change order. We could call a special meeting. We can do that if need be, once we have a better understanding. And I think what that gives us, if we do it in 2 steps, is if dewatering is going to be that much of an issue, we have the ability of knowing it and locking that down and telling AO and Cardozi, 25,000 is the price. You bought everything that goes with it.
Well, I guess I'm confused by that, because if there's an interim step where we find that, in fact, it's gonna cost them at least the 25,000, what's to prevent them from coming back and saying, wait a second, now that we got in there, the whole roof is falling in on us?
I don't think you can protect against that scenario, because if they do this and they find out that it's not doable at 25,000, they're not going to do it regardless. So I don't think there's a difference there.
I have a question for Dave. Do you think that AO knows the groundwater is a problem?
Yes. When we opened that manhole structure, I have a video of the water coming through the side of the manhole. He literally thought, that's why we had a camera. He thought that the sewer main was broken. That's how fast the water was coming in. So we had a camera to prove that it was just groundwater.
So he made that proposal for $25,000
After he did.
with that knowledge.
How long ago did that happen?
Yeah, when we stopped the project.
Okay.
6 weeks ago. Yeah.
The rain has only made it
Yeah.
worse.
That's fine. What risk are we running of further delaying by going halfway with this, or?
I don't think we're delaying if we authorize the purchase of the structure. That's the one piece that needs to be made. It takes, what, 4 to 5 weeks?
That's what he's saying, yeah.
So, none of the actual excavation and installation of the piping, and so the only excavation that they're considering now is just to dig a hole to make sure that where they want to place it will fit. But all of the other work, the other 20-some thousand of work, won't be done for another 4 to 5 weeks. So there's no holdup for that. So if we authorize the purchase of the structure, and I guess that's, we have to decide how to do that, because we don't know what structure ultimately will be bought.
Well, I think we're gonna direct them to build a full manhole.
And that's why they were gonna dig the hole, so they can get the shots on either end, so they can order the proper manhole without having to build a doghouse.
And the holes will be pre-cut in that structure according to the inverts that they shoot.
So my opinion is they know all that, but whether they thought of all that.
Wayne, are you talking about how to authorize the process? It's difficult. Can we authorize you to make 1 or 2 decisions, or?
Well, I think in terms of authority, I have, yes, I think that's a way to do it, because I think I have authority up to $10,000 to, and this work should fall well within that.
Yeah. And then if we need to have another meeting, we'll do it.
All right. So do we,
The work itself won't need to begin until the structure arrives on site.
Right, so we have time.
There will be another PBC meeting before that happens.
Yep, that's true.
do we need to formalize something so that, I'm certainly, we'll talk about this tomorrow, and we'll poke at this and determine whether or not this is all in, considering everything that they know about the site. I don't want to raise issues that unnecessarily, but I think we need to let them know that we're looking at this carefully. Do we need to do anything tonight to, in the event that we decide that we want to go ahead with, once we get a better price? Or are you going to leave that, or would you leave that up to the chairman?
Yeah, I would.
This is for the structure they're gonna buy?
They're going to buy a structure. It should be, I would guess, somewhere in the $3,000 range, I would
It's not
think.
I think he priced it like $1,900 or something.
Well, that's the doghouse, right?
I don't know how much
Yeah.
longer it could be, because it's a solid bottom. So there's gotta be more cement, whether a doghouse, it's still solid on the bottom, but, it's just
Yeah.
open through the trough, so
Yeah, it's a
it could be
couple
like a
$100
couple of $100, right?
Okay.
So I still think you would still be within your
Fine.
realm. It's not gonna go up that much.
Why don't we do this? Just for I think for the committee's peace of mind, I think I'd like to have a vote authorizing me to accept the cost of doing this work, the test pit excavation and the purchase of the structure.
How about so moved?
Well, what is it?
We don't know. It would be within, it's $750 plus
It's
some.
not in any of this material.
No.
It's $750 is the one piece, Jim, and then the other piece is the manhole structure we don't know.
So the real cost of the project is this plus something else. This
There-
change order doesn't cover.
It's in there, well, it's sort of in
It's
there.
built in.
Yeah,
That's what
it's
Wayne
in there,
asked
but
him.
it's a different type of structure.
I think that's what Rich's biggest problem was, they gave us one specific price, and there was no breakdown.
Yeah,
But
okay.
he's saying that in that 25,000, it's in that, the manhole's in that $25,000, not the 750.
No.
The only addition was
I
the
think at the
750.
bottom it said 750.
Right.
And
That's
then.
from an older PCO.
Right.
I didn't see.
Right.
Is it still on there about the extra for if it runs over on the trench box, or is that?
I think it has $1,400 to rent the trench
Yeah.
box.
In the price.
Is that the shoring?
Yes.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's 14 is in there.
It says add $800 a week after 1 week if
Yes.
if it goes on. So he's allowed for, looks like a week and a half, right?
So you'd be authorized to commit to like not more than $5,000 is what the
I would think so.
manhole and the digging should be far below that, but, you know,
I would think so.
yeah. I didn't want to constrain you by $3 off, you know?
Well, that's
Yeah.
kind of my fear, so
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure everybody's comfortable with that. But that's certainly the order of magnitude of what the cost is that we're talking about.
I took the numbers I heard and added a large amount. So-
Mhm.
All right, so I make a motion to authorize the chair to authorize the contractor to do preliminary work, to dig a hole and order the manhole in the amount of not to exceed $5,000. That was really elegant, wasn't it?
It's well spoken. Shakespearean.
Left over at line 5,000.
I think it should.
Second.
So, yeah.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Can't say it.
I can't say anything anymore. I don't say the select board meets either. 'Cause it's-
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We don't have to do roll calls anymore.
That
is nice.
You know, previous select board representatives were not constrained and voted, so.
Then I'll vote yes. I did make a motion.
Some of them. Not all of them.
I did help craft the motion.
There you, thank you.
Just
So
a number.
Wayne, can I just, then what happens to PCO 09 R2?
It becomes R3.
It's not, we're not gonna take any action on this tonight.
Correct, yeah, correct. We're gonna hold on to that.
Good.
And theoretically, it would be 5,000, or, yeah, the money that we spend on this would.
Would be reducing that by 5,000.
Right.
Question, have they changed the labor to put in those channel gizmo things? It's a technical term.
The channel gizmo things, can you be
Yeah.
a little more?
Fiberglass structures
Yes,
that
thank
go
you.
at the bottom of the manhole.
Didn't they have like 5 hours for each one?
I didn't see 5 hours for each one. I know they had, they said it would be comparable from what I remember, it would be comparable from building it to putting it together. I don't remember them
Are we
saying
talking
that.
about the reliner?
Yes.
All right, let's pull that.
I'm looking at the installation because at one point, somebody said, well, 5 hours seems really excessive to do that.
And that would be.
That would be you, maybe, who said that. Just want to make sure we look at that.
This is the PCO 15 though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
See anything on
Yeah, it's 5 hours at $510.69.
there? There you go, per device. And it seemed to me that someone, maybe Dave,
No, I think that was Nick.
was it Nick?
Yeah, now it's
who
coming
said
back
they
to me,
were-
and I think it was putting those together and putting the cement in, and that concluded all of that.
Except that we still thought it was an excessive amount,
I
because
think-
they'd never
I think
done it
5
before.
hours is a little much. I mean, I don't know, I really can't say. I've never done one either, but it's just screwing stuff together.
It's just like your PVC
Yeah,
pipes.
and putting, if they, yes, it is. And they're gonna pour cement out of a truck too, they're not gonna be mixing cement, from what I understood from Nick, so that's gonna save a ton of time as well.
So that's something to watch carefully
Yeah.
with your stopwatch.
Yes.
It's work in a concealed space, right?
Yeah, that's the
So
thing,
There
yeah.
has to be a lookout guy on top.
Has to be
Yes.
on
Right
the
down
list.
below.
Yeah.
So the 5 hours may be a combination of the
Okay.
two of them.
Yeah. It could be 2.5 hours.
It's a
for two
confined
people.
space,
Yeah.
correct.
Confined space.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
And they would have to use the harnesses and everything else.
Yeah.
So what's your so PCO 15? Are we recommending acceptance of that?
No. None of the pricing, so were they gonna credit us? See, I don't see them adding 5 hours onto what they have already bid for. I don't see that at all, even if it is 2.5 hours for 2 people. I don't see it taking them whatever they bid priced for building one and adding 2.5 hours. I don't agree with that at all.
And you were right, Nick brought up the
Yeah.
fact that they'd never done this before, and
Right.
that may have been to
Yeah.
protect them.
I can see it being equal
Yeah.
or maybe a little more, but not excessive.
Right. This
It's
was
a
the
lot of
meeting
work to
that,
build the
Wayne, you
structure.
weren't at. This is,
Right.
that we had this discussion, and it was brought to his attention in, well, what's the cost? The rebate back to us for
Right.
the, and
Right.
that's where I don't think we never
We
included
never
in
got
any
an
of that.
answer
I don't
to
know
that.
if you even have, I don't.
I'm trying to read, I thought somewhere Nick said that there was a no cost.
No cost, right.
uh,
Savings.
Savings.
I thought so too. That's why I was confused.
He did say that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see where that is, though.
There's a lot of stuff to go
Lot of
through. Want to
moving
go for a
parts.
commercial break or?
Check the Red Sox. Are they playing tonight?
Yes, they are.
Good Willis Air.
I know where that was. It was in response to my question regarding whether or not he'd do this work on a time and materials
Yeah,
basis.
it was in
And-
an email chain.
Right, and Robert, you followed up and asked about those credits, and I'm not sure I can find that.
So that's a one-time price of $510. That's not per structure.
I think if you look at the, right, 'cause I think so if it's 510.
Yeah, for the whole, all 7 of them or 6 of them. So that's minimal. That's probably an hour per structure, not even an hour per structure.
I can't find it, I'm sorry.
You're looking for an email from me?
I'm looking, no, it was from Nick. I think he was responding to an email from you.
I asked him whether there was credit on the.
Right.
On PCO 9 for the work.
But he referenced the credit, he said, please note, I think he was referring to 15, but I just can't find it now. All right, so what's the timing on this? Do we need to, when is this work going to be done? This is 4 to 5 weeks out as well, right?
Would he wait to do that?
He doesn't have to wait to do that. I mean, that could all be done while he's waiting, because those structures are set and unchangeable right now, so and he actually started building one, and we stopped him when, we decided we were
All
gonna
right,
possibly
so-
change.
So what's your thought, Dave?
What's my thought on
The
going
price.
forward with the price?
Yeah.
I think it's okay. I mean, $510 for the whole deal. I thought it was $510 per structure, which would be ridiculous, but for the whole thing, I think that's gonna be,
So
you're-
it's for all 5?
yes.
There's only
Because
one
they didn't
cost.
put the price in, well, I still, well, obviously they're still keeping their price for the cement and everything else. We should get a credit on the bricks though.
I thought there should.
Because they don't have any bricks on site. The bricks they have on site, they're raising the manholes with.
Oh.
So they have,
I noticed those on site, I was thinking.
yeah, they're raising the structures with those.
Got it. You mean
So we
bins?
should be able to get
Yes.
a brick credit, but the cement would be the same and labor would be comparable, so.
Well, what he says here, labor brick versus channel system even swap. That's in his price here.
So then what is the $510?
I thought that was for the extra.
Is that the extra, the shooting the grades?
Yeah, the grades and wasn't it plugging them and then you had to put a plug in each end of it?
They don't have to.
Like-
The way,
like-
yeah,
like-
the way you, those bolt right onto the
Yeah.
pipe sticking out, so they don't float and everything else. It looks pretty slick and easy to do.
If you guys are the experts on this stuff, if you're comfortable with these fiberglass inserts rather than brick,
With the minimal slope. I mean, if it had 2%, you wouldn't need them. But the minimal pitch, especially in the structures are flat. There's not much pitch in the structure at all. The pipe is 0.5%, but the structures are flat.
And this is just gonna keep it liquefied and pushing toilet paper or, anything out, paper towels. I mean, the $510, I mean, you can't make a contingent, vote, and then just with a clarification, you have to vote.
We're dancing on the head of
I
a
got
pin
it,
here.
I got it.
All right, so,
Sorry.
I make a motion that we approve PCO 15 in the net amount of $6,840.36.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Somebody just be able to send me a copy of that?
Hmm?
Would you be able to send me a copy of that?
Of this?
Mhm.
You don't have this?
I don't think so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have the other one?
No.
Are you cleared for it?
No?
I don't have either of them, but since we didn't approve the other one, I don't need it right away.
Okay, all right, I will send this to you.
want the actual PCO?
I do.
Well, here.
Well, there. Well, thank you.
Well, Jim was making fun of him when he walked in with all the color copies.
You would like it electronically though, wouldn't you?
This is actually, is this the right one?
15?
That's not 15, I don't think.
Almost.
15, we didn't, you want 15?
Yes.
That's what we.
Oh, you know what?
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Jim?
Paper expense
Clerical error.
All
Thank
right,
you.
all right.
We can
Those
look
are-
at the electronic.
Those are the major issues where we stand with the project right now. So the roof, these sewer connections, I don't anticipate major issues with the rest of the work. I mean, some of this is still getting out of the ground. Obviously, the roof is not. But I think that's the easier of the issues to deal with. But, this is, getting pretty far along in phase 2. So, I think if we get over these hurdles, we should be in good position to finish up with Cardozi and then turn the project over to you folks to finish it off. Let's talk about paying some bills, and unless there's anything else in relation to the schedule or any of these issues, anything else anybody wants to bring up in relation to the project? Actually, Diane, do you want to talk about the internet cost?
Yeah.
Data?
Two things. We did the wiring, you saw an invoice in the package. Anderson came in at $17.89, which was great. There are a few other cost items which are in the process of being ordered. We're looking at $6,954.87 for shelving for the equipment room, for a switch, patch panel, firewall, brackets for the patch panel, UPS, all kinds of stuff, patch cables, blah, 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 blah. So that'll be ordered, and we need to figure out whether we can cover it from the project or not. Some of it is what I would call infrastructure for the town. Some of it is relative to the project.
The big item is the firewall. $4,045 is for a
Yep.
firewall. If I understand from Mr. Jermaine,
That'd be the one.
this is a concern for public utilities that are subjects of hacking attack, right? So certainly it's part of the cost of getting into this building. You could certainly make the case, I guess, on the other side to say that regardless of whether or not we were building or not, the DPW would normally have to deal with this risk. I think there's money in the budget. If you look, exclusive of the cost of the change orders that we've just been talking about, we have a construction contingency we started with a $320,000 contingency, of which we've spent roughly $51,000. We have about $269,000 left in that contingency. The phase 1 and 3 contingency, we have $177,000 left in that. We've spent roughly $12,000 there. So we have a substantial contingency left. Certainly would have unless there's some policy issue in paying or not paying for it in the project, I think the project has the funds to consider it.
He did shop these around quite a bit. I mean, there's only so much you can do with state bidders list, but he dumbed down a couple of things because you just didn't need the extra capability, so.
What's the feeling of the committee?
I did talk to Pete, I don't know the committee, but I did talk to Pete about this Monday night, and we do, again, I volunteered Dave to, we'll build the shelves and all that, and he was happy with that. Not that that's a big amount off of it, but, we'll do whatever we can to,
Okay.
so he knows that, so, but
Is
that's
there-
not gonna lock.
Is there space for a rack?
Oh, yeah.
Shelves?
Yeah.
All they need really are shelves. They don't need a big rack.
Mhm.
Okay.
They need to get the UPS up off the floor and the firewall and the switch. So,
I have a question, maybe it's for Jim or Diane. The infrastructure we need to protect, is a pretty important and sophisticated public health issue here. We got to maintain the right flows and everything for water and sewer, so it's a big deal. From my perspective, the DPW building, is the headquarters, if you will, the operational headquarters for the water and sewer systems at the very least, and stormwater as well. So to me, it's analogous to some changes that were made in the Clyde Brown School to improve the security of certain doors and windows. I mean, this is something we all know. I mean, we're sitting here in an era where this is just happening all over the place. So I think it's critical to do, and I think it should be part of the project.
good.
If we don't do it, then we're leaving this project incomplete.
I don't think there's
My
a
opinion.
question of whether or not it should be done.
Yeah.
It's just a question of what pocket it comes out of, and I'm fully in supportive of paying for it here. It's, for me, it's not even a question of having to trade off buying something else. We're not even close to that, so I think we're in a good.
And my take on it was if DPW remained in this building, they'd be protected by this firewall. So as part of the project, they are moving out of the building, so therefore they need their own firewall, which makes it part of the project.
Okay.
As long as we have enough funds in the project to cover it. I could make that same argument if we didn't, to pay for it out of operations, because it's critical to have, as Jim
Either
said.
way.
It's got to happen. But if there's funds in the project, it's clearly part of the project in my mind.
Does that room have a lock on the door, the mechanical room?
Yeah, I think it is.
Scatter room?
Yes.
Yeah, it's got its own heating, air conditioning system.
Yes, yeah.
Everything,
But a lock,
Well, if it doesn't, we'll make sure.
because that's also
Yeah.
pretty important.
I'm good.
Okay, all right, good. All right, we'll have him submit his invoices and we'll process them. All right. Let's see if we can't pay the rest of the bills in relation to the DPW. We've got the Cardozi requisition, and if we can get through those, then we can let Mr. Taylor go home at a reasonable time.
Turn those into cookies for tomorrow.
Fix that clock. I don't know if that's part of our jurisdiction or not, but.
What's wrong
Do
with
you
it?
want me to pass these to somebody to read them? Or do you want me to read them
Well,
and
I
send
make a
them around to approve, or?
Those two are really good over there.
I'm not allowed.
I don't need your comments.
I wasn't,
Wow.
I wasn't pointing
You
at
need
you
to
as
sign these, though.
Go ahead, Diane.
No, Jim's ready.
No, there's
He's-
official
I
there.
picture him practicing.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve payment of the J.J. Cardozi invoice through the end of June in the amount of $270,081.68. It's been approved, reviewed and approved by Robert Taylor.
Second?
So moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I would like to make the comment that in this requisition, we are in fact withholding $50,000 of Greenwood's bill, which was submitted and we have rejected for the purpose that we've already discussed to deal with and correct the roof on the staff building. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passed unanimously.
Okay. Next, we have an invoice from Taylor and Burns. This is for the period 6/30 through 6.
Through end of June.
Okay. End of June in the amount of $9,020 even.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. John, are you voting?
Aye.
Opposed?
He's having a sleep.
Motion carries unanimously.
Sign this?
At the top.
Up at the top, under those other signatures.
Oh, I see, okay. That's why I was.
You ready to follow along, Jim, just so she gets it right?
Okay. I make a motion to approve 2 invoices to Beta Engineering dated 4/13. That's timely. In the amount of $660.88. Jim, say second.
I thought that was
Second.
approved a while back.
What?
I thought that bill was approved a while back.
There were two, they were from April.
Okay, two different
April.
ones.
This is through the planning board, right?
Yeah,
It's
it
not
was-
us. I mean, that's.
April 2nd and April
Yeah.
13th.
I know they were out and we approved one when they came out to inspect the retention bond, but.
I saw the note from Beta asking about an old invoice and whether or not it had been paid, and I don't think we'd ever.
Yeah, these haven't been paid. I don't know where they were for,
I mean, it must have happened, like, because
Yeah.
I didn't get them.
they came, I'm trying to think who gave these. It was not the typical route I usually go.
They went to John McVeigh.
Yeah.
How much is it?
Total of $660.88.
Yeah, one was $338.50, one was $322.50.
Yep.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
So one of them went to McVeigh, the other one came to you, to Wayne.
Well, the McVeigh one obviously had to do with Board of Health.
Yep, I would
portion of
guess.
the permitting, which they were unhappy about.
I'll get back to that. This is the invoice for the wiring from Walco Service Company in the amount of $1,789. The wiring was done a week or so ago.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, the last one is the GCG invoice. It's, I don't know when it's through, 6:30, in the amount of $1,145 even.
Second.
All right, so I have a question about this invoice. Is this the one that includes a Viking or
That's just the Yankee.
a Yankee? Why is it not included? Isn't there a portion for GCGs?
Well, I
review?
felt that that was again, I didn't know, the town never said to the committee that we were gonna ask for peer review costs. So I just took that out of the sewer engineering fund for those reviews.
Okay. All right, so you're paying that separately?
It's already, yes.
Okay, all right, understood.
And thank you.
Well, I felt that if it was, we should have asked for that at the beginning, it's not fair.
So Jim seconded.
Second.
Politely seconded.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Here you go.
Is that
One
it?
more autograph. That's it.
All right. So that, does that conclude the
I just
discussion?
have one discussion about, again, a savings. Kim asked about the summer help. The reason why I have not been submitting summer help at the last May town meeting appropriated funds to keep 3 summer help going forth from July 1st. So I see no need of carrying that line item in
All right.
as part of, when we broke it down in our billing prospect. I can't bill, it's just, why double dip? It's,
That just about covers the firewall, thank you.
it could be,
Those two.
that's,
Good, well, that's good to know. The whole point about summer help was to mitigate
correct.
a larger cost for your staff that
Correct.
would, would have otherwise been
Right.
incurred. So,
But with, this year, we did get a new general staff person to go out and cut grass, and there was extra funds in the summer help
yeah,
line item to
Great.
carry 3 full-time people, staff.
great, all right, good.
So you can move that someplace else.
Well, we can zero that out, we can move it back to contingency.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that. All right, great. Anything else we need to talk about in relation to the DPW? We have our weekly staff meeting, or our construction meeting tomorrow morning at 10. We're meeting with Greenwood at 9:30. I invite anybody who would like to attend to come, and we meet right out in the open next to the construction of the staff building, so you're welcome to come attend. All right?
You coming back, Robert, tomorrow?
I'm staying at your place tonight.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say to
I
you.
forgot to mention.
Oh, sorry.
He's gonna make us.
He's gonna make you cookies.
We charge rent, not cookie dough.
All right.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you all. Good to see
Thank
you
you.
all.
We'll see you in the morning.
Thank you.
See you in the morning.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen.
You have a good night.
Just think, you drove down Orchard Street. In the next couple of weeks, we're gonna have Ridge Street done too.
Are you really?
Yes.
Yay.
I'm gonna hold off on that. The thrill will be too
No.
great.
Might be too much to take.
You've been asked by that for several people who live up there, they're non-committal.
Yeah.
I don't wanna miss it by a day.
Senior Center?
Yeah, let's talk about the senior center. Diane, I think this is your agenda item.
Last week I sent out an email to BBC, to Select Board, and to the Library Director, the COA Director, and the Rec Director. I asked them, I explained that we wanted to move on to the next phase of the senior study, and we wanted to look at things like where the center was located and whether it become a senior center or a community center. Excuse me, I asked each director to advise who their board member would be and give me an email. And so far, only the library has responded. The library director has asked Wendy Barry to come attend the meetings. And I've sent Patty Kao another letter, and I will call her tomorrow. I was too late to get her today. And I will have to go after the rec department as well.
Just be clear, the select board responded first.
That's right, yes. The ink hadn't dried on the sent message when Craig said, yep, I'll be there. So we're looking at a possibility of a Zoom or an in-person. Just kind of depends on where we are and what time we do. The library director has childcare commitments at home, so would prefer to not have to go home and come back.
I would prefer in-person, speaking for the select board side. I can make most things work with enough advance notice,
Good,
okay?
yep.
So what is the, at least initially, Diane, what is the focus and goal of this working group?
Well, it's to get them all familiar with the project and the progress we've made to date. So we'll be able to show them designs. They understand that we want to bring this to the community to get input from the members of the community. But we need a little bit more dynamic before we do that, because the library and the rec department both offer activities that are fairly well attended by seniors. Not recently, because they haven't been able to do that, but pre-COVID, the presentations that the library did every month at least, probably I would say, rough estimate, 50 or 60% seniors in attendance. So, that represents a resource we haven't really considered. And the rec department pickleball is, as you know, busy, busy, busy.
Well, from my point of view, I think how to best access the community is the key here. That's what we're trying to do. And I think, as you've already said, there's two main questions. One is it going to be a senior exclusive facility, or is it going to be?
You're on the mic cord.
I guess I moved it.
Okay.
As our architect refers to it, a multi-generational type facility. So I think that's the one fundamental question. So I wouldn't limit it just to seniors. I think the issue that we've been dealing with up to this point in time is that the only group that really has been questioned so far is the senior population currently being served by the COA. And so we need to certainly expand that, but not just to seniors, even though seniors are 25% of the town's population today, when you look at 60 and over. But the whole rest of the population, I guess from school age up, is really in play. And then the other fundamental question is, where should it be located? And I think that depends on what it is that the community wants to build, because then the square footage and what that looks like in the programming, again, will define the size and scale and shape and, you know, what happens in the facility. So that to me is the goal, and I think those committees are the ones that have a stake in providing some of those services already. So sounds like you've got the right group to.
And the select board approved this on June 7th.
All right.
To have this
To have a
meeting.
work group.
All right.
Yep.
So we have a rough draft Survey Monkey questionnaire that's been prepared by our architect. What's your thought about sharing that, rolling that out? Or is that yet to be seen? Or
I'd probably push that to the second meeting. I think there'll be so much from the design perspective and getting an understanding of what we're looking to accomplish as a group, that I think the survey stuff can follow.
okay, all right.
I'd say beyond design philosophy, you know, but whether it's going to be that exclusively senior or community-based.
Well, we could discover that, in fact, stakeholders like library and recreation support a separate facility.
Yeah,
We don't know
exactly.
that.
That's, yeah.
What we're looking for is the community's consensus, at least, as to how we should proceed, right? And at this point, we've had a fairly narrow conversation with one of the stakeholders, an important one, and we've been certainly constrained by COVID.
Yeah.
So even just bringing these folks together in the same room, as you indicate, is going to be a step. Now, after that meeting, could this group say, we think we ought to have another 2 meetings? We think everything we agree? They're not a decision maker, it's the input.
Right.
And I think we should describe, the intent would be not just the input from this group, but ultimately to engage with a broader based survey.
That was in the email that I
Yeah,
sent out.
and
so-
then, informational meetings, and I think this is something we would have done, I think, a year ago, had we
Right.
not had
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
the problems that we are, maybe, whatever it was.
But I think at some point, when you get a couple of steps into this with this working group, when you get ready to go live and to present something to the community, there's going to have to be some granularity to it. It can't be just conceptual. And so teasing out the kinds of things that the community really wants to do, and whether or not they're currently being done in the library or at the COA or in the rec department or wherever, I think will then come up to the forefront, and then they'll say, yeah, that's really important, and we want to keep that in-house and that's separate, or we think it would be well-served to have it somewhere else. I think that's what we really need to figure out.
Well, and I think it's as important to hear these groups that are serving the community, not only what they are doing that they want to continue, but what's not happening anywhere that we need to find a home for. So it's both sides. I mean, we wouldn't be taking necessarily moving an activity that's happening at the library over to this new building, but what isn't the library doing, what isn't the rec department doing that if we had a building we would be doing. So.
Well, there's been a simple scheduling over the months,
Yeah.
where the library would like to do a program and the room's so booked,
Mhm.
they can't do it. Well, what if they had,
Right.
room 3 at the
Yeah.
community center available to them for that? I mean,
Or the group
that's-
that wants to do the event has that room available.
Yes.
So yeah. Just get it out of the
There is
library.
space
Yeah.
constraint we've discovered for community type events.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and this has been an issue that has come up a number of times. And I just throw this out for the working group to consider. I question whether or not the space in this building is being fully utilized as community space, and whether or not it could be, if there could be more space made available for community use, if in fact this turns out to be the more desired location, if you will. And the reason I say that is because there's an awful lot of space in this building that is tied up storing paper. And if there was more, if things were digitized, if we could get out of the paper storage business, even if it was sending it off to Iron Mountain, I think there's a potential for more utility here. Is that something that you think the committee, the working group would consider?
Well, yeah, I guess so, but I mean, that becomes the administration's responsibility.
Right.
If in fact the building department says we must have 30,000 pieces of paper
Right.
that we can access, that's, the community can say, well, that's fine, but we need that space for programs. Then the administration is going to have to react to that. And I can't tell the building department, as this working group, to get rid of all their paper. I don't need to single them out, but I mean, they're one, and planning board as well, that has maintained a
Reams, yeah.
tremendous amount of records.
We do too.
Yeah,
We'll stop that.
so,
I'd like to.
you know,
Yeah.
if that's the end, if that is in fact, we believe the community demands a higher, better use for this structure, such as even this room,
Yeah.
then I think it's up to then you go back to the administration and I guess the select board and say, you know what, the community thinks you got
Mhm.
space here you aren't utilizing properly.
Yeah, and I think
And-
that's a good point. I think that all should come out. Yeah.
It should come out, like,
Yeah.
now this group's not gonna come up with that, I don't think.
No.
No, but I think if there were, what I have heard in the past when this subject has come up is a question of funding. So who's going to do the work, and who would sit and scan documents if they could be, accessible electronically?
For $7 or $10 million building.
Well, that's right, right, but
Yeah.
again, it's, to me, it's a balance. If you can utilize some space here in lieu of building, 7 to 10 million, or some portion of that, here or somewhere else, then that is a mitigating cost, and would certainly be part of, the total project.
And if we could accomplish a lot of the goals by clearing out and redefining and doing the space, as you said, I mean, a few $100,000 for scanning versus $10 million for a building. If that solves the problem, it's a simple choice. And it's
Well-
not gonna go all the way to solve it.
Right.
But if that gets us 50% there, or
I would advocate that be something that at some point is considered in the overall scope of any project that we do, is to,
I think I'll go one better. I've yet to submit an agenda item, just learning how to do that. But I think the digital record
Call the
storage.
chairman and say, I want the-
I understand that. I've been happy with the agenda that's come out, and I'm loath to make it longer. But
You'll get over that, I'll
yeah,
assure you.
yeah. But I think digital and record retention and use of storage space and turning this into a room that works. I mean, the encyclopedias in the corners, I think that's what they are, is nice. But does it lend itself to the best use of this space? So those are questions that, senior center, everything else aside, that's a whole nother topic that I think needs to be, especially with the building department relocating to a new building, or at least relocating a portion to the new building.
Within the building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's options that we can consider out at the building that.
I mean, I think we need to
DPW.
keep the focus on,
Yeah,
well, I understand the
yeah.
paper in this building is ridiculous. It's not something we can solve right now, but
no, but I just mentioned it so that it's not forgotten. So it's not, so we don't get all the way down the road and then,
Yep.
and that,
Well, this is your observation made a number of times, and I agree with, this is a community asset, this building. And if we abandon it, or pieces of
Right.
it, then we're not using the community's asset. That's not a good outcome.
Agreed.
I agree.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
that's how we came to be in this building, because the school department abandoned the building in the first place, and we ultimately reclaimed it as an
As a
asset.
Town hall and community center.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What we did.
Mm-hmm.
Was
Yep.
it then?
Yep.
All the communities?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was there, and so was Jim.
I was on the finance committee at the time.
So you've got a gym and a few meeting rooms.
Wait, at the time, there was a young adults space and recreation space.
He was offering programs here as
Right.
well.
And Council on Aging
Yes.
in their space down below. So it really was.
On the ground floor.
We like to call it garden level.
There you go.
Learned that
They
in
must
Boston.
call it the basement. Garden level,
All
the
right.
higher rates keep their.
I mean, they've got rooms there that don't get used except during their business hours.
Right.
That's right.
And there's
So-
no way to really lock up the rest of the place, so.
Well, you're talking now about how would you manage this building?
Right.
It's not poor Paul running around trying to keep everything clean. I mean, that just, I don't know, if you're actively managing a building that's gonna be open, from 8 AM to 8 PM.
It's a
Let's
different
call it
staffing.
6 days a week. What is the standard for
Yeah.
maintenance,
Right,
et cetera? It's not poor Paul, I mean,
exactly.
I mean, as it is now, you can't come in here on Saturday without Paul.
that's right.
I can't, I
And the
have the
issue
select
of-
board key now.
Well, it's an asset at risk. We don't wanna just open the doors and
Exactly.
come running through and
Right.
Yeah.
graffiti and whatnot, so.
Right, you're absolutely right, and the situation we just addressed as we walked in with the crumbling front stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That has to be looked at in a holistic.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
So I guess the other thing that I would ask the committee to think about is when and how do we then get our paid consultant, Abacus, our architects, back involved? And, what is it that we would ask them to do? Because they still owe us quite a bit of work.
Right.
And so, I think that needs to be something that the group
Well, let me ask you this, because my understanding is what they were gonna do is they were gonna help us figure out what programs we wanted to provide to the residents of the town. And they asked us to do that, and we've got lists and lists, and we just don't seem to get anywhere with that. And once they had that, they could then, and then they would help us get a broader array of community input, similar to what happened with the school, where the consultant helped hold, I guess it's focus groups, but
Right.
not by invitation. Everybody's welcome.
Right, absolutely.
Right.
Well, how far away do you think we are from having your group in front of us?
Probably a couple of weeks, maybe, if I'm lucky.
No,
Could be 3, why?
it would be more than two. They just will.
I mean, as soon as I get the other 2
Well, I
respondents.
mean, my question is, do we want to get together with Abacus at a regular meeting first before we have those people there?
I don't think that's useful. I would keep the first meeting as familiarization and letting people start to realize what the issues are.
So you've only heard from one group so
Right.
far.
Right.
When did you first send it out?
This one was last week.
Last week.
A week or so.
Last week.
I think you're gonna need a minimum of 2 times. Because you're gonna learn enough in the first go
That you want some more.
that there's, some sharp elbows, everybody's getting along, where the programs are gonna start to crystallize.
Excuse me.
And that doesn't mean you can't invite other people. This is not a committee.
Right.
This is a
working
group that the
Work group.
select board is asked to come together with the various departments and see if they can come up with some ideas to move this forward.
Would it be helpful for the select board to send out an invitation or reiterate your invitation? Or forward it on with a
That's-
please respond?
I
I'm not
don't-
trying to get pushy on it.
No, I don't think so at this
Yeah.
point. If I don't get response to the phone calls tomorrow and the
Okay.
next day, then we'll go to Plan B.
If I could
We have
recall
a
the name of the
different view on
chairman.
that, Diana.
What?
The selectmen should tell them.
Well, that's where I was heading
It's not a voluntary
to.
item here. You
The-
didn't. You're
Well,
supposed to respond. You work for us.
They
See, that's the
appro-
direction I was going, Jim, but again, less than a couple months on
I
the
like
committee.
this,
They
The
approved,
invitation.
they
Yeah.
approved the work group, yes, we're trying to
Yeah.
be soft. When I get them on the phone, it won't be so soft.
And if that doesn't go well, then I think I can recall the chairman's name and he can send an email.
Yeah,
If not,
maybe.
I can send it.
I might be able to find him, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, frankly, I think this is about time.
Yeah.
You know, we've been treading water here.
Yep.
We've talked about this, John. I think we've kind of reached the end of the conversation we can have with Abacus now, because they've been asking us, we'll design something, we'll help you with
Right.
the programming, but you gotta tell us what it is that you really want to accomplish. And we've not been able to get to that part. So I think now we've got a broader group that will be able to help us with this thought, but I think it will help them think about their own operations and things that they may want to do, you know, themselves in a possibly a different light. So this is exciting stuff, and I think it's going to be fun, and I think hopefully if we do this right, we'll get a lot of good information.
The library director told me today, because we were on a call for something else, that she was really excited about participating in this. Last year they did, and the year before, a memory cafe for seniors that had memory impairment, and they're looking for a little bit more funding to continue it into an ongoing program, as a number of libraries and towns have done. And that's really kind of a senior activity.
Well, if you recall, Abacus was certainly an advocate of drawing those kinds of things into a more senior focused group, as opposed to being done at a library or some other group. Whether or not that's the right answer, who knows? I think that's.
They have a consultant running the session. This is not oh, come on, let's all sit around and sing Kumbaya, but they have a consultant who's knowledgeable about running these sessions. They bring in entertainers, artists, whatever. They bring in people to the sessions that they've had. They kind of died out last year because Zoom is a hard medium for a lot of people to understand.
I agree.
Yeah.
But they're getting ready to ramp them back up again.
And my thought would be along the point I think where Wayne was heading. If we do get a new facility built, if we do get the new space, maybe that is something the library lets go of, keeping the consultant, keeping the program, keeping all the people, but just transfer it to the new
Yep.
place.
I mean,
And,
that
yeah.
can all be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, but conceptually in my mind, if I'll call it the director who has the greatest amount of competency to drive
Yeah.
this thing, should be the one who does it. And if she happens to offer it
Yeah.
in the new senior building,
Right.
that's fine.
Yeah.
If we find that I don't necessarily move it, if there's a driver for something, then that person's gonna drive it. You just can't, and somebody else is not. Now,
Well-
these folks aren't all gonna be here forever either, and they'll move around and whatnot, but it's so, everybody's in their own little bubble. I mean, we're not unique on that in the
Right.
town of Millis.
But I, in my opinion, the Memory Cafe should be a senior center activity that has not been offered by the senior center. The library picked it up. Good for them. I think it's great that it was done and it was important to do it. But
It's-
as we get into the fuller facility, it might make sense. I'm just saying it makes sense to consider.
It's
Every-
split in the state
Yeah.
between libraries and
But everything
senior centers.
requires a driver and a
Right.
budget.
Right.
Right.
Right. And so we had somebody who drove the process and found some bucks
Yeah.
to move it.
They got a grant. Kim
And
might know something about that.
So,
Well, either way, we're 5 years away on that one, best case.
So one of the other points that I would ask this working group to consider is that the ultimate deliverable is going to be a proposal at town meeting.
Right.
And I think in order to give the voters the complete picture of what the work, whatever findings we develop, the permanent building committee builds buildings. We don't make decisions about what should be built, or I guess we have a decision about how things should be built and make sure that they get built according to our specifications. but that's the limit of our responsibility. But the other part of this that needs to be considered is the operational budget. How are all of these things, if we do build something, how does it get maintained and paid for, whether it's by staff or keeping the lights on, the utilities, all of those costs need to be a part of whatever it is that we're proposing for people to make a big financial commitment to.
A lot of pieces,
Yeah.
a lot of moving
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
So I hope that I get a good response from REC and COA.
Well, I think we need to set the tone. I wish you Godspeed. I think that's great stuff. It's, this is the hard part of trying to figure out, what you want to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes that takes some, hard thought. And I wish you a lot of luck with this.
Yeah, you're gonna
With
be
this
here
group.
too.
Well, I will be tiptoeing around the edges, but I think you've got the makings of a good group.
I think so. I will report back when I have everybody corralled.
If your phone calls don't go well.
Oh, trust me, they will be fine.
I'm inspired by my former colleague.
Yeah, right. We are gonna try to meet during the day, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometime in October.
Former colleague, is that?
No, not my former colleague, I meant to say my predecessor. My former select board member, who I worked with on many a project, but never.
All right. Anything else we need to think about tonight?
Minutes?
Consider? Oh, we've got some minutes to approve.
June 22nd minutes.
I move that we accept the June 22nd
Yeah.
minutes of the Permanent Building Committee as submitted. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously.
Motion to adjourn. Oh,
Can we
no,
just do
that
next
we-
meeting? Next meeting.
Well,
Should we set one and then have to change it? Or?
well, I think we decided to meet tonight because there was a conflict for Tuesdays, but then the Tuesday person
Went on
wasn't here
vacation.
tonight.
No, actually, we decided to meet tonight because the rooms are really hard to come by. So.
Well, if we had a senior center,
Every
day of the week.
The Wednesday, and Craig used to have a conflict with Wednesday, but now he's not on Finance Committee anymore. So Wednesdays are okay for people, and the rooms are available.
My suggestion is we go with Tuesday, the 24th of August. No?
No,
She says no.
no more Tuesdays.
No?
No. If Wednesday is a problem, we can use Tuesdays, but it's really a pain in the neck to try and find a room.
Did you just say that to me?
I
Yes.
did.
Yeah.
I did.
And I
It's
was
been a
with
long
the
time
objection to
coming.
Wednesdays, but I have no issue, well.
Yeah, nobody
I'm
had an
going to be
issue with
attending a few.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 25th? Is that your,
That works.
Yeah, Aaron can't do those.
Right.
Just need some-
fine. All right, fine. I think this keeps us in the proper sequence for reviewing the requisitions for the DPW.
So Wednesday, the 25th?
Right. And again, I encourage any of you who would like to come tomorrow to the construction meeting.
I will definitely try to be there. There's some crap going on, but 9:30 is the.
Greenwood meeting. Good.
Oh, we have pictures.
I know, I Googled it.
All right. Well then, motion to adjourn?
Second?
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.